Will and, for the podcast and for YouTube. So I see we are live on YouTube. Well, we have stream. We have stream. Let me turn this down. Okay, we have stream everywhere. So as soon as I hit go live, we'll be live. You got any questions?
No, we're good.
Okay. I like to for the person kind of not to know what we're going to talk about because I like it to be real, natural.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm good to think on my feet.
Okay, okay. Um, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and hit live. Okay, we look like we're live on YouTube right now, and then I'm gonna hit live on LinkedIn so I can see comments and stuff, and then we're gonna get right on into it. All right, we are live on LinkedIn. Let me check. I usually like to check for my own notification. Hey guys, if you're popping in, we're just getting started with today's career coach chat. Yep, I see people piling right on in. So we gonna get it going. How you doing today, Jermaine?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm out here. I'm in Toronto, and it's sunny and cold.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to get into that. Being in Toronto and all that. But hey everybody, as you popping on in, we're back for another live episode of the Smart Career and Money Moves podcast. Today we're doing a live chat with a fellow career coach and LinkedIn content creator, Jermaine Murray. He's known as the Jobfather. He's on a mission to help 500 Black people get jobs in tech. He's grown an impressive audience on LinkedIn, y'all. 75,000 people are tapping in to hear what Jermaine has to say. And he's been featured in Forbes, and he's a contributor on CNBC.com. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Oh man, that's it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So before we get into the chit chat portion of the show, I want to know a little bit about you. Because
Yeah.
all of us have like a dope, interesting story. And so for you, you studied journalism and media. How do we land in tech recruiting?
You know what? It's actually pretty funny. I had a job hosting a show on SiriusXM as one of their contributor consultants. It was for a basketball segment for the Norman Knight show, and it was good. It was a perfect job until I got let go because they canceled the show. And in an effort to try and get back into broadcasting, I tried different ways to try and get a job. And in like the most desperate move, I paid someone an absurd amount of money to write a resume for me that didn't work. And I was so desperate, like I was listening to advice from my dad, and it was like advice that worked in the 70s. This is like 2013, 2014, and he told me that back in his day, he would have just walked in to the establishment with his resume and he would have gotten a job
Mm-hmm.
for the strength of that. So I tried that, and I got kind of laughed out the building by the receptionist,
Yep.
who kind of asked me a question that opened my eyes, and she was like, if you were the hiring manager, would you want to read this kind of resume? What kind of resume would you want to read? And I went, studied up everything I could on resumes, and started making resumes, and they started to like be very successful in terms of getting me callbacks and jobs. And it got to a point where my friends asked me to make them resumes, and
Mm-hmm.
I became known in the area as that guy that like connected people with different opportunities. So I was working at a sales job for Enterprise Rental Car, running one of their branches, and I had a really really bad day. And I asked myself, if I could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I said I want to work for PlayStation. So I went on PlayStation's job board, and I looked at all the jobs that had to do with talking, anything to do with like interviewing or anything to do with conversation and communication, because that's my strong suit. And I came across a tech recruiter posting, and I realized that I had everything it was asking for except for like the 5 definitive years of like tech recruiting. And that's how I was like, you know what, I'll give this path a shot. And that was like 6, 7 years ago, and I've it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Wow. So you did something that most people are afraid to do. You didn't meet all the qualifications. You went for it anyway.
I shot my
talk
shot.
talk me through that. Like, where did that confidence come from? Did they even ask you about it? I mean, that's the real secret. Like, are people even really questioning you about all meeting all the requirements?
Are you talking in terms? So in terms of PlayStation, I didn't actually get the job at PlayStation,
Okay.
but I used that. I reverse engineered it. So I was like, I want to be able to be viable for this job. What do I have to do in order to be viable for it? To make someone go, man, Jermaine, if we bring you on our team, you'd be a great fit. You'd be a great asset, right? And what the job description was asking me, it had a lot that I already possessed, except for that 5 years of technical recruiting experience. So I decided, let me go get the 5 years of technical recruiting experience, and I put PlayStation in my 5 year window. And I was like, I'm going to amass all the skills that I need so that when the time comes, I could throw for this China job at PlayStation. I already know that they're hiring for this job. So like it's gonna come around, right? One way or the other. I will keep my eye on it in the next 5 years and see what happens. And I went and I got my first recruitment job at an agency. And the joke is that I got that job because I interviewed at another agency, and one of the hiring managers didn't like me, but the other one did. It was a black guy from the same neighborhood that I grew up in, and he was like, "You're not gonna get the job here because this person doesn't like you, but I know another person from Scarborough that's hiring for his team, and let me make a referral." And it was that way that I had two, black men, other black men from an area that I grew up, advocate for me, speak on my behalf, and it ended up me getting my first recruitment shot. And I just took it and I ran. And once I got my in, I did everything I could to learn the skills of what makes a really great recruiter, but also build up community. Right? I realized very early on I was in this privileged place where I had employers hit me up saying, "Yo, do you know who we could hire for these jobs?" And I've always been kind of an advocate, and I had an opportunity to like refer people in my network in my neighborhood from my walk of life to these jobs, people that look like me. And one thing just led to the next. With that as my intention, I put myself in positions to always be networking, to always be connecting. I used to go to 4 or 5 networking events per month, right? Trying to meet as many black people in tech as possible, and putting them in a WhatsApp group and using that to like, build community and kind of foster a network that way. I didn't wait to find it. I went and I instilled it. So, whenever I was across from an employer and they're asking me like, you asked where this confidence comes from. If I'm across from an employer, I know what I bring to the table, right? I remember for one of I made a LinkedIn post, but I remember for one of my jobs, I was interviewing with somebody and they asked me like, yo, if we don't hire you, what are you gonna do, right? If we don't give you this job, what's your next step? And I always tell them like, yo, I'd get a job at your closest competitor and I'll crush you, like
Oh, wow.
I'll crush you, dog. Like I've always just believed in myself that way, and like I think that's the energy people need to have, because it's a lot more easier to believe in someone that's confident, maybe even a little overconfident, than somebody that's timid or too timid.
Yeah, I love that, right? It's, no one will believe in you if you don't already exemplify that, like, I have what it takes. I I love that. I might have to steal that. That, like, I'm gonna go work for your competitor. I
Yeah,
know who they are, and this is what I'm gonna help them do. So I was gonna ask what ignited your passion to help black people get into tech, but it sounds like just from your story that that is what that some other black people that you knew in your community helped you. When did you find that this is a problem that I need to continue, that I need to push, that I need to continue helping to solve?
yeah. One of the first hires or placements I did in my career, um, was basically I placed this guy who was new to the country, and he was from Eastern Europe, and he was telling me that when he first came to Canada, he had to like his family landed in Toronto, right? And when he first came to Canada, he couldn't get a job as a developer because he didn't have quote unquote Canadian experience, right? So he had to leave, and like Toronto is basically our New York, so to speak, right? In terms of opportunities, in terms of everybody wants to work here. It's a very competitive, bloodthirsty, blood cutting market, right? It can be very difficult to get your break. So in order to he had a young, he had a young family. You know, when they landed, his son was born, and the first job he got was like in Alberta, which is pretty much the difference between New York and Texas, right? He had to live far away from his family, and he says to me like he goes, he's like when he comes in to sign his offer, the guy's skipping in like he's extremely excited. And I'm like, yo, okay, what's up, right? And he's like, you guys got me a remote job, right? And he's like, you got me a remote job, and I'm gonna be able to walk my kid to daycare, right? And I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's sweet. And he's like, nah, you don't understand. When I first came to this country, my son was born, and I immediately had to dip. I had to go over to like three different provinces, 6 7 hour flight west. Um, I missed my son's first words and my son's first steps because I had to work away from home. And you just got me an opportunity where I'm going to be able to walk my son to daycare every single day, and I can make sure that I'm not going to miss a single moment of his life, right? And I was like, yo, that is extremely powerful. I am loving this moment. And then there was this little voice in my head that came out of nowhere that was like, damn, I wish he was black, right? And
Okay.
and I was like, oh wow, let me unpack that. And I realized that, I know a lot of people in my community that would have like loved that type of opportunity. I noticed that there are a lot of like stories in my community, in my friend group, that had a lot of broken relationships with fathers. I have a very complicated one with my own dad, and it's because a lot of our parents came from an impoverished background of limited opportunities, and that conditions you to think a certain way. That conditions you to perceive the world a certain way, your own opportunities, right? And I realized in that moment, giving this person this kind of opportunity where time is more in their control in terms of how they're able to author their lifestyle, their quality of life, so that they have the energy and the opportunity to invest in the relation with their kids. It was a ripple effect. And I'm like, that is something that, may have preserved or may have enhanced my relationship with my own father. Same way for some of my friends. And it was like, and I was like, I'm now in a position where like I can, try my best to even like help one person, from that looks like me, have more of ability to invest that time in their family dynamics. And that was where like the Jupiter 100 situation kind of came out, where with that same like that led to the WhatsApp group, and in that WhatsApp group, we started getting a lot of people different jobs, and I was telling them, anyone that was in that group, I was like, if you're in this group, I'm gonna put all of my jobs that I'm working on in this group. And if you get a job, I'll count you. I will prep you for it. And I was like, if you have another job from another recruiter, that you're going up for, and you're not too confident, let me know, and I will prep you for that. Because if you get in, that's a win for me, right? I also came across this report from the Brookfield Institute that basically also revealed like these metrics for representation of Black folks in Canada, and we were less than like 4%. So like we were less than 4%. We were the ethnic group that got paid the least. So that also radicalized me, and I was like, for every single Black person that we can open the door and get them into tech, where they can have access to you know uh, environments or work companies that value quality of life, that value benefits, that value like giving people more
Yeah.
ownership over their time, right? That is a win for us. You know what I'm saying? So when we did that, I remember we did that at the top of 2019, and in 2019, I helped out 67 Black people get new jobs in tech through that WhatsApp group,
Three.
and I was like,
That's dope.
yeah, it
That's
was.
dope.
Yeah, and honestly, that was just the start. Like the year after we did 85, and I said to myself I was gonna do 100, help 100 Black people get jobs in tech in 2021, and we ended up doing 126, and we did another 77 last year, and I think we're at like 19 this year. But the total number, when you put them all together, is 369 Black people
Wow.
helped, and this is all across the world, like from people
Okay.
in Toronto, people in Vancouver, people in the United States. We helped someone in Japan get a job, the UK, Germany. We're trying to get some more people opportunities from the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, because I'm Jamaican.
Okay.
But like the whole idea of Jupiter HR and the Jobfather is like, I want it to be, if there's a Black person somewhere in the world and they're like, I don't know where to start, I want to get a job in tech. I want to be one of the first resources or people that they think of, because we make it so transparent and easy, and people like understanding how to get a job in tech, what to do, the steps to take, and the resources that we have in our network that's grown considerably.
You touched on something that I'm passionate about as well. Um, the idea that your career, your job is really here to serve you and to serve your life. And so I want to talk about one of your posts that you did recently. Um, and so you say, screw being passionate about tech, be passionate about life. Get a job that pays you well, treats you well, and enables you to work with people you like. Um, so what was the motivation behind that? It sounds like that's the thread, behind your coaching and how you're helping people. But at what point did you discover that like it's got to be about more than a job?
So it's twofold, right? The first inkling I got was actually probably like 2008, during like my first week of school, when I went to school for journalism, and I was talking to a group of friends. Or I was trying to make like a strong impression. You know how young men could be, always trying to boast and trying to like, egos taking place. I wasn't really mature, but I was trying to boast and make a strong impression on folks. And I remember saying something akin to of like, um, once I'm done this program, I'm gonna get my high paying job. I'm gonna be rich, right? And I'm gonna live the life I want to live. And I heard a, I heard a laugh. And when I look, it was my professor laughing, and
Okay.
I'm like, it's like this is like 2 days after I just paid tuition too, and I was like, Professor, why you laughing? And he's like, you want to make a lot of money? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you chose the wrong profession. I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, journalism is one of those jobs you do because you're passionate about journalism. And I was like, huh. That was interesting. And I pursued a journalism track, right? I did everything from, working for different publications, different magazines. Like I said, I was on Sirius XM. I did interviews with like Raekwon the chef. I was living a pretty, I felt like I was doing a lot of journalism activities, but it didn't translate to being able to help me financially with my goals, and that was an extremely frustrating point. I worked like multiple jobs multiple times just trying to meet ends meet, and that was because like my industry that I chose my profession in wasn't allowing me to live that kind of life. Um, I specifically chose tech, right? For me, it was wanting to work in an environment that I just had a lot of interest in. I'm a big video game guy, and I was like, if I'm gonna work away from journalism, it might as well be in an environment that I'm gonna like. And like, I didn't think tech recruitment was going to be my calling. It just worked out that way. But like, I led with my heart. But I know a lot of people that I'm friends with that got into tech exclusively for the money, right? And there's some sort of stigma about people just doing things for the money. Like, if you're in an interview, for instance, and they ask, why do you want to work here? And if you're truthfully like, because you had a high salary posted, they're gonna look at you and judge you, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, my career in tech, like I'm very fortunate that I fell in love with recruitment, but like my career in tech enabled me to travel, right? It enabled me to afford to travel to see the world. It enabled me to I hadn't seen my prior to last year, I hadn't seen my 91-year-old grandmother for 16 years because
Jesus.
I
Oh,
couldn't
to
afford
get to
the air
Jamaica.
travel.
In
No,
Jamaica.
England. She was in England.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't afford the air travel or the stay to go see my grandmother, and 16 years went by. She
Mm.
hit her 90s. I'm very fortunate that she's still in this world, and I got time to see her. It was tech that afforded me the opportunity to not only work abroad because like tech companies are modern in their thinking and flexibility, but paid me enough because the industry was competitive enough where I got to see my grandma. Like you don't have you and like that's great that I like my job, but like if somebody like I'm not gonna begrudge somebody to give themselves that same opportunity, right? If they don't necessarily love the job, if they're confident enough and they have the skills and they can do it, by all means do it. I've worked sales jobs that I've absolutely hated, but like the commission check kept me there longer than it should have, right? Like there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. And that's where that post came from because I was tired of people chastising other people for like getting into an industry or getting a job because it pays well, right? You don't have to have the most passionate job. Like
Yeah.
if it makes you passionate about life, that's good enough.
To me, that comes from a place of extreme privilege.
Yeah,
Like we're all here playing the game,
yeah.
trading time for money. And so you must be from an extreme place of privilege if you're not here actually trying to get the most value for your time.
Yeah.
So I saw a LinkedIn article just recently, and it was saying that one job may no longer be enough to pay the bills.
Mm.
Nearly half of U.S. employees have a side hustle or a source of supplemental income. My question to you, I want to get your opinion. Is corporate America actually ready for this? Because it has been historically frowned upon. And I actually think I was probably, maybe laid off or let go actually because of that. So is corporate America actually ready for people to have other sources of income?
I don't think they really have a choice, to be honest with you. People ask me all the time, like, yo, what is with this? They're like, yo, what is with this job hopper culture that this new age millennials and Gen Z have? Like, where did this entitlement come from? Right. And I have a theory, right, that it comes from like your job, like jobs producing less and less. Like the ROI on a job is less and less and less and less. And like, back when my parents bought their house in 2003, I'll even go to like back in like the 80s and the 70s, you could afford to like work at a grocery store, you know, working minimum wage or working, whatever the wages were. And there were people in that same grocery store that some of them had stay-at-home spouses with multi-bedroom houses, right? All on a salary that paid less than 50 grand, right? You know what I'm saying? That's that in itself allows companies to have a lot of sway over people because it's easy to tie up my whole entire lifestyle into this one paycheck, right? Because that's how far my paycheck gets me. I live in Toronto, right? Myself and a lot of my peers make well into the six figures, right? That is more than what my parents made combined when they bought our
Right.
house, right? My salary and that of my peers would be lucky to even be able to afford a condo, right? Like your average home price. My parents bought their house off of my mom worked as an admin in insurance. My dad worked in construction. They were able to buy their house for 220,000 in 2003. That same house is almost close to 2 million now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the wages haven't gone up.
Right.
You know what I'm
So,
saying? So
yeah,
how you
interesting
gonna have
point.
control?
they're expecting us to be okay with the lower wages. Meanwhile, everything is becoming extremely unattainable. I was watching a clip off of Earn Your Leisure the other day, and they said that $100,000 in New York City feels like 38,000.
It's true. If you add in inflation, there are a lot of reports that will tell you $100,000 in 2023 is about 50,000 in 1990 dollars. Right? Right? And like yeah, I think like New York has it's the like you it's not a like I've had friends that work in New York City. Like I've had recruiters that have told me that they get paid like 170 180,000 from these big tech companies, and it's simply because they live in a high cost of area like New York or San Francisco, because it's not abnormal for rents to be six
Right.
7,000. How do we let this happen?
Yeah, I moved to the Bay in 2016. Yeah, and our first temporary apartment, it was $5,000. And that
How?
was that I know. And people were paying it. And people pay it, right? And it's one of those crazy markets. And I'm sure New York is the same way, and maybe Toronto, where it literally changes every day. So today it's 5,000, tomorrow it's 5,150.
Yeah, 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 and it's all demand generated. So it's like, you know, you almost are forcing me like to
Yeah.
get a side hustle at this point. And either you have an option, either you get with the program or you pay me more, right? Because if you're like, I'm not gonna do it, there are plenty of other companies not that are like, yo, we recognize what's going on, and we'll let you do it. That's another thing I like about tech is that like side hustles, consulting, contracting, right? That's all kind of expected, or like it's not abnormal, right? As long as there is no like, because you have a lot of people that are building their own startups, for instance, right? And as long as you're not like using proprietary technology or information, and as long as you're not in direct conflict or like within industry with your workplace, most employers are going to be like okay with you doing what you're doing, right? Doing a little consulting on the side, a little contracting, right? As where the ethics may lie. For like recruiters, it's a bit more complicated because you're dealing with a lot more like sensitive information and like personnel that could be like used for like other opportunities. But like it's not abnormal for developers to like be contracting for developer jobs. It's not abnormal for marketing professionals to be consulting for marketing professional jobs, copywriters. The list goes on, right? So yeah, if big bank wants to be like, yo, you can't do this on the side. You just gotta live on our one paycheck. I'm gonna do my thing on the side anyway, and then find another opportunity that's like, yo, that's cool with us.
That is dope. So yes, going forward, guys, we're only interested in opportunities that allow us to do it. I mean, it's only right. It's only right. One of your other recent posts that you put up where said that the strongest position you can maintain during a job interview or salary negotiation is being okay if it happens and being okay if it doesn't.
Yeah.
People really struggle with that because we just talked about how hard it is. People are still earning $70,000 and struggling in high cost of living areas. How do you how do you walk away from that when you have nothing on the table?
It all comes down to like confidence and knowing yourself, but also like just having faith. I always say like you got to have a line that you can't cross, and that will protect you. And just like not keeping in track what your bigger picture is. People can smell desperation. People can smell when they can take advantage of you. And you don't want to be in that position where that's how you're coming across, because you'll never get what you're worth, right? Sometimes there may be some exceptions where I myself, and I know a bunch of recruiters, if we see someone undervaluing themselves, we'll like cough. I'm not. It's not. I'll like cough and tell them that I heard a different number that's higher, right? I've had recruiter friends that are end calls, end Zoom calls and send text messages and be like, "Yo, sis, you need to be asking for more," right? Those are the exceptions, though, right? There are other recruiters, and I've seen recruiters that have taken, joy in presenting somebody with a significant lower offer than what they can get, and I never understood why, because it's not your money. But that's a different conversation. Like, it's not your money.
Yeah.
It's not your money. Like a recruiter, yeah. Like if you're a recruiter watching this, you should be happy when somebody negotiates for more money and they accept your offer. Don't be happy holding back because it's not your money. You're not. It's not like you're not getting your bonuses tied to it. Your salary's not tied to it. Your feedback scores is not tied to it. It's not your money, bro. Let it go.
And it's
I get that
completely
off my
made
chest.
up. It's completely made up because there's no metric for you that says if you save us $100,000, they're not gonna do anything. You're just making yourself feel better about it.
I don't know why that. I don't know why take like in this economy too, not giving somebody as much as they were able to get is something to be proud of. If that's you, if you're proud of that as a recruiter, you suck.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And hiring managers are the same. They
Yeah,
fall into the same type of bucket that, like, even with performance reviews and all that type of stuff, it's like, give the people their money if you want them to stay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or in the case of the recruiter, if you want them to join. Um, so, what's your number one piece of advice for Black people who are intimidated by the tech industry? We just talked about being intimidated by negotiations, but what about being intimidated by the tech industry itself?
I would say realize that like the tech industry is just a formality, and in a lot of ways, tech is already in the company that you're working at or the opportunity that you're working
Mm-hmm.
at, right? Like Target is a tech company, and a lot of people don't like think when they think Target, they think retail, but like if you're doing customer service for Target's online store, that's the same as doing customer success for Amazon, right? It's the same market. Like your company is probably leveraging tech quite a bit, and if not, there's somebody that's doing that exact same job that you're doing for a tech company or leveraging those skills similarly within a tech company as well. So I think one of the best things that you can do is to go about is humanize the people behind the brands at the tech company. Don't get too caught up in a particular brand because you use it very well. I mean that's more of an advantage than like something to be intimidated by. But reach out and connect directly with the people. Go on LinkedIn, try to find people that had similar backgrounds as you, and realize that like there are a lot of different ways that you can pivot into a tech company, whether it's customer service, law, accounting. Like tech companies need lawyers, tech companies need accountants, tech companies need customer service people, tech companies need HR managers, tech companies need training people, tech company needs graphic designers, tech companies need marketers, email marketers, copywriters. Tech companies need it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like a tech company can't run just solely off of the strength of their source code, right? I've worked with a lot of and like CTOs and founders and engineers and people that deal with like a lot of complex stuff. Sometimes they'll think they're explaining something very simply to me, and I'll be like, bro, like I don't I
Try
like
it again.
yeah, try again, right? I don't like the term dumb it down, but like I don't know what you just said to me is, and if you're trying to make this a mass market thing, I think people need to know what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's always a need, and just identifying that or like the equivalent, even doing what I did, seeing jobs that you could do, but you might just be missing a couple years worth of skills and working backwards will totally take like the fear or the intimidation factor out of the equation.
Yeah, because working in tech doesn't mean doing the tech job. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that trap. I have to go get a certification. I have to become a coder. And it's like,
Exactly.
let's capitalize on what you already have and what you've been doing. But that kind of leads me to my next point. And this is another post that I saw you recently put up. A hill I'm willing to die on is to always be the first, loudest, and proudest to talk about yourself. And I kind of feel like that's why people struggle to make a pivot because they automatically think I'm not working in tech. I haven't done that job before. I must not have any value.
Yeah, I think it's because just like society has just made it such a negative thing to be confident because people will always misplace your confidence for arrogance. And my whole thing is I don't care anymore, right? If I'm speaking, if I say I can do something and I have the stats that prove it and the people that co-sign it because they were there to witness, I'm going to tell you how amazing it is of the thing that I did, because you need to know, like, people don't appreciate how hard jobs are sometimes, right?
Mm.
I always say, like, look at construction workers. They're doing some really complex stuff, and a lot of people just like write that off, but they shouldn't, right? Everyone has value. Everything that everyone does is impressive, right? And if it wasn't, if it wasn't, then you wouldn't have been asked to have done it. That's the key focus of it all. So, when we don't speak life into it, it comes back to that confidence thing. Like, why would I want to hire you if you're not even confident in what you can produce? If what you it's like love. If what you're producing doesn't match what you're saying or what you're doing, or you know what I'm saying, like if there's a disconnect, right? I'm not gonna fall for it. I'm gonna find something else that's more aligned with what I want. Right? You don't want second place. No one wants to be second place. No one wants to hire second place. Like to quote Jay-Z,
Mm.
second place is the first loser. Right? So you gotta like don't be telling it like if they ask you like if you're a business analyst, right? And they go, who's the best business analyst on your team? And your answer is anything but you, you're limiting your potential right there.
You're dropping so many gems. If anybody is not confident watching this, you better walk away being confident. And I want you guys to drop some hearts, drop some likes, and drop some questions. We do have a one question, and I'll get to that in a second. But I want you to finish the sentence. My smartest career and money move was
Asking my girlfriend out.
okay. Tell us about that. That's not what people normally say, but let's hear it.
You know what it is? I have a partner that is very supportive, and I have one that isn't afraid to hold me accountable to the things that I say, whether it's like, leaving toxic environments when they become really toxic, or encouraging me to take that career risk, or someone that's like encouraged me to ask for more money than I was comfortable with, right?
Mm,
Having somebody that to bounce ideas off of, or having somebody to like be like, yo, you know, is this too much? Am I asking for too much? Right? And having someone validate that. She's been really great for like killing imposter syndrome and just really like supporting it. So yeah, I would say like a lot of big career risks or moves that I've done over my life. I did them, and it was because I got the support or the encouragement that I wasn't crazy if by doing
mm.
this move, and it's made a world of difference.
Yeah, I love that. So basically, having the right community around you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're trying to, navigate this thing on your own, I mean, because confidence comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we do need to lean on our community to get that confidence bank. Um, so I want to hear your opinion on like predictions about the recession. At the end of 2022, there were 360,000 people laid off, and however, 260,000 jobs were also created. And so it's this weird situation we're in right now. There are a ton of jobs and a ton of people without work. What's your prediction on what's going to happen with the recession? What's going to happen with the job market this year?
I think it's gonna happen. What always happens with these situations. If I'm a big fan of history,
Mm-hmm.
both history that happened that I lived through and history that I've only heard about through stories. And I'm specifically talking about like the '08 recession was supposed to be like the greatest recession of all time since the Great Depression, right? Things were like really, 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 really bad. Um, but then what always happens in these recessions is that people, the real people that are trying to like make things happen find opportunities in these negative situations, and from there the new opportunities are birthed, right? If you think
Mm-hmm.
about 2008, it was all dire. 2007, 2008, 2009, super dire. But what happens is we had the Silicon Valley boom, the second one, right? The first one was the Apple and the Microsoft one back in the 70s and 80s. But this one was new. This one was like the digital economy, the digital world exploded, right? What used to be just eBay as a place to like move your unwanted merchandise, evolved into Facebook Market, right? In terms of connecting people, it evolved into Facebook. In terms of like thought process, it evolved into Twitter, right? Where people could air their grievances over the challenges that they were having in the workplace or in life, right? There were all these different platforms that popped up solely because people found a way to innovate on like the miserable reality that we had at the time. So it leads me to believe that we're gonna have a similar phenomenon happen where things are gonna be dicey for the first little bit,
Mm,
and then the people affected. I wouldn't be surprised if like a lot of the people that have been laid off just make the jump to entrepreneurship, right?
yeah.
Some of those will fail, some of those will succeed, some of those will have middling success, but people will be getting jobs out of those opportunities, right? So yeah, I think if I do think that it is going to be a downturn. In regards with the layoffs, I think it's more monkey see, monkey do.
Mm,
Um, a lot of companies, like, let's be real, like we live in a capitalistic environment, and anything that's pro employee is bad, right? And a lot of investors have come out and said that they felt like tech workers were too overcompensated and treated too well. Everything from the remote stuff I just talked about to the compensations, the bonuses, right? They were looking for an excuse to trim the fat and use
mm-hmm.
fear to kind of rein in, what people are willing and able to ask for, right? Because a candidate market is not good for employers. An employer market is good where you can be picky and cheap with the talent. Not, you know what I'm saying? Like when everybody's asking for 100K, it's stressful. But when you're able to get 100K talent for 80K because the market is nasty and you're able to play into fear, you're going to do it, right? But these things also have a breaking point as well. Like all that work, like all those people that were laid off, they weren't like a lot of them weren't laid off because the company was bloated or they overhired, so to speak, because they didn't have the work to justify it. The work was there, the work was justified, and the work is still there. But now it's
Mm-hmm.
fallen on to the people that have been left behind. So
Yeah.
what's going to happen? Either quality is going to take a hit, or the output and quantity is going to take a hit. But we're going to reach a breaking point where companies are going to have to hire again, right? And we're going to go back into the same cycle over and over and over again. It's capitalism, baby. That's what it's designed to do. Infinite growth, right?
Infinite growth. Absolutely. We got a question from Evangeline, and she says, I would like to learn how to improve the searching skills for an internship on LinkedIn. And
Mm.
that's a good question because it is a slightly hard to find an internship on LinkedIn. I mean, I haven't necessarily been looking, but um, how do people find internships these days outside of their school? I mean, when I went to school, they were big about, formulating a community to do that. So what do you think?
I think the same way. Like you gotta just have tabs on like the right companies. Like there are a lot of companies that actually invest in internship programs, right? Shopify has one. Well, Simple has one. Dynatrace has one. DraftKings has one. New Relic has one. A ton of different companies actually have internship programs where they hire interns. So keeping a list of those type of opportunities and having people on the inside or
Mm-hmm.
making effort to have people on the inside is going to be a major key for how you do that. Outside of just like keeping your eye open, and if you're outside of like a program, I would say tapping into communities, Discord, Slack channels, Reddit groups, like Twitter. Twitter is a fantastic tool
Mm.
where a lot of people communicate, like they're hiring for different opportunities, internship programs, the work. So leverage social media, leverage your community, go out and create community. Don't just rely on people that you know to introduce you.
Mm-hmm.
Like find people that are interesting and try to introduce yourself to them.
You're speaking my language because I always tell people I don't believe in applying for jobs online because it is about community. It is about getting in the right room. It is about talking to the right person, putting yourself out there. And so, yeah, it's almost like, instead of just combing through the job boards looking for internship opportunities, you might want to pivot your focus to like, how can I get my community? How can I find the community? Um, You've dropped and shared so much helpful content today, Jermaine. How can we support you? How can we get in your community?
Well, if anyone's ever, so, feel free to follow me on my social networks, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. And if you ever see me, recruiting for a job that you're interested in, always feel free to give me a shout or go on my job board, jobs.jupiterhr.ca. And you can apply for the jobs there, and we do the referrals to the companies. You can always book career coaching sessions with me. And if your company is hiring and you want to like get more black people in the door, feel free to give us a referral to your HR manager. Let them know they use our recruitment agency. But otherwise, just like feel free to follow me on the socials and support our initiatives. We're helping out and advocating for more black folks in the space.
Excellent. I'm gonna check out that job board myself because some of my clients might you might have some
There you
postings that some of
go.
my clients could take advantage of. But thanks so much for giving us your time today, Jermaine. It's been an amazing chat, and I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been a pleasure and all the best.